Nice. Okay. So we're going into our last match of the day, qualification match 70. And right after this, you're going to want to send your alliance representatives down to the field to be ready for alliance selection. But there are ranking implications in this match. Stephanie, what do we have?
It's coming down all the way to the end, the very last match. We have 3 teams here that are looking to either secure their place in the top 8 or maybe move up a little bit. We've got 3310 Blackhawk Robotics. They're up there in the number 2, number 3 spot, looking to stay up there. We've got Spartatronics staying up there. They started in number 2 today. They're still up there in the top 5 or so. And then we have Bare Metal. I believe they need to get those 2 ranking points to stay in the top 8.
Right, and if Bare Metal can get a 4 ranking point match here, they have a good opportunity to climb up as well. So this last match is going to have some shakeups, and as everyone's trying to make their pick list, it's hard to wait till the last second to really know where your selection spot is going to be.
Right. Teams have the opportunity to talk to the team that they think they're going to pick or be picked by, but with this much movement in the top part of the top 8, teams will really have to scramble and have their alliance representative ready, both talking to their scouts in the stands and down at the field, ready to be part of the picking process. So let's go down to the field for our last match of the day, qualification match 70.
All right, folks, it is time for our final qualification match of Chezy Champs 2018. Remember, after this, we're going to do alliance selections at 11:40. 11:40 is the time to be back here for alliance selections. But first, we've got one more pulse-pounding match to get to, and it's going to feature a red alliance of Team 4183.
They're the Bit Buckets.
Team 2046.
Bare Metal.
And Team 3250.
It's Kennedy Robotics.
For the Blue Alliance all the way from Texas, please welcome Team 3310.
It's Blackhawk Robotics.
Their partners, let me hear you make some noise in the crowd. 3512.
There's Spartatronics.
And rounding out the Alliance team, 5818.
Riviera Robotics.
Andrew, I'd say it's been an incredibly exciting set of qualification rounds. Do you have a favorite moment from Chezy Champs so far?
Actually, I have 2 favorite moments from Chezy Champs so far. Now, the very first one was that 4-cube auto from Mean Machine. That blew me away. Everyone in the arena just stood up and cheered. My second favorite moment, and I'm a little biased, is the Lawrence Torrance Power Hour that we had in that one match. I'd like to see it again. That was fun.
Oh, I look forward to it. Yeah. Well, I mean, that double climb there at the end was pretty exhilarating. I'd also like to give a shout out to that time that 254 got handed, I believe, their first defeat of the entire year right here at Chezy Champs.
I used to think that it would take a miscalled foul to end a streak. Turns out it just takes 1 point.
Just 1 point. Oh, everyone went wild. It was stunning. 1 point up on the board.
1 point, and I mean, granted, it was technically 6 points, but we don't need to worry about that. It's 1 point, and it was 1 point, and you need basically an army and bad luck to beat the Poofs. That's really it.
Well, that was the way it was this whole regular season, but when that score jumped at the last second, up by 30 points to make a 1 point difference, holy free holy, as you could hear the gasp in the audience. It was amazing.
I don't think people knew how to react. I know I certainly didn't. It was shock, if anything.
Well, we're going to see if they can keep it going through the elimination rounds starting at 1 p.m. today.
Also, a friendly reminder to teams, we will have alliance selections at 11:40, so please bring your representatives down to the field. Anyone who does not have a representative cannot be picked. So that means no picking 469 again. You can't do that. That joke's very old.
Team 3310 just finishing up some last pre-match tightening of the screws. Always an adventure when you see a screwdriver on the field before a match.
You know what though, Logan? It's better than when you see a Sawzall on the field before a match.
At least there's no Roomba stuck on the field.
All right, it looks like we got a green field here. We're just about ready to go. I see the thumbs up from our referee. So Chezy Champs, let us begin our final qualification match of the weekend in 3, 2, 1, go!
Here we go in the match. We've got Team 3512 going for a Blue Alliance cube drop. It's a good strategy. I like it. 2046 going over. 1 cube in the scale and 1 tossed outside. That's okay. Here we go. Intellia Blackhawks going up and hitting hard, getting that cube right into the scale for the Blue Alliance. Over on the red side, 3250, that's Kennedy Robotics. They're trying to maintain that red ownership of the scale. Currently, both alliances own their current switches uncontested. 2046 and Kennedy, though, they're going to try and make sure they keep that scale for the duration of the match. Blackhawk is up and hits the top. We've got a good cube there and a levitate already played by the Blue Alliance. We've got cube up 2 almost on blue. There we go. 3250 Kennedy, 2046 bare metal. They're trying to keep that advantage on. Oh my gosh, all 3 blue robots are going for that scale. All 3 are trying to score, and they're not running into each other, not getting in each other's way. That's some beautiful alliance coordination we're seeing over on blue. They're working hard, they're trying to get it, but Red Alliance is not trying to slip. They're not going to fall. Red Alliance makes their moves accurately, perfectly. They have precision. They keep that scale on their side. We have real-time scoring at almost an 80-point differential. We're down to the last remaining 40 seconds, and Red owns all switches. Red owns the scale. Well, now they own one of the switches, but you get the idea. There's a anti-mark intake wheel on the floor. This match is going everywhere. We've got a missed shot from 3250. Going for their climber. 3512 is up and latched onto the rung. 2046 going up for a climb, it looks like. We have some forks deployed by 3512 as well. Red taking a commanding lead. 3310 going up on 3512. It looks good so far. 2046 is up, and that is the match. We have our scores. 401 for red, 262 for blue. Red Alliance takes it. Now before we go to RoboSports Network, I want to remind everyone that we have Alliance selections at 11:30. Sorry, I was asked to say that before. I miscounted. Anyways, you get the idea. RoboSports Network, take it away.
Okay, last match of the day, 2046 looking especially smooth. What did we see out of that match that let Red run away with it, Stephanie?
When you're going into your last match especially, what you want to see is consistency, do what you've been doing all weekend, show your best performance, and I think that's absolutely what Bare Metal was able to do in this match. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. They were able to show a lot of control, make sure they stay ahead on the scale, while the Blue Alliance was kind of scrambling a little bit there to try and catch up.
Yeah, got to give credit to Kennedy Robotics, 3250, able to really step it up and put a lot of cubes on that scale. A few key double taps kept the Red Alliance alive, but Blue Alliance not helping themselves with that autonomous mode by not putting any cubes on the scale. They started behind and they stayed behind. However, on the Red Alliance, they didn't get that 4th ranking point. They didn't get the double climb, and that hurt because Bare Metal had a chance to jump very high in the rankings after that match if they could have gotten to 4 ranking points.
Right. Ranking solidified after the last qualification match. Blue doing the best they can, getting the 2 bonus ranking points with the auto quest and the face the boss. So now we have our top 8 done. These are the robots that will be Alliance captains or being picked and moving up slightly. So
3310, able to hang on to that number 2 spot, even losing that match. So that's a very impressive move there. It comes down to tiebreakers between them and 254. And I'm sure those 2 robots, those 2 teams wanted to be number 2 because it's such a critical pick position, or the ability to decline if you didn't want to play with Citrus.
An impressive rise from 254 after their first 4 losses of the season. At one point they were out of the 20s, and now with all of their bonus ranking points, they've made it back up. They're in a position of power where they have the opportunity to decline, where they were at one point in the competition having to accept.
Absolutely, and with that win there, Bare Metal is able to secure that number 5 position. That seems to be probably a pretty good spot for them. We've got 3512 being able to stay in the top 8 after starting at number 2 this morning with that tightly packed grouping there. And Madtown just behind in number 7, followed by the Mean Machine. Right,
so in the arena, make sure that you're sending your Alliance representatives down to the field for Alliance selection at 11:45, and make sure you're talking with your scouts so that you're ready and that you've coordinated with the team that you're preparing to pick. But everybody's going to have to be on their toes. There might be interpicking. You have to cross teams off the list as they go. But let's talk a little bit about what the top teams in the rankings, what the top seeds are going to be looking for with their first partners. Mason, where's Citrus? What are they looking for their complementary piece?
I think Citrus Circus can play a lot of different roles in this matchup. They can be a scale robot. They can play deep on the field and go attack switches, but they're a little bit lacking on stacking really high. So they want a partner who can go really high on a losing scale. And then the key to this game in these elimination is going to be who's going to have the pair up for autonomous mode that makes sense. If you can get ahead early, that really helps. So we've seen Citrus Circuits doing a lot of 2 cubes, sometimes 3 cubes autonomous modes, but there's some robots out here that can do 4 cubes, and getting one of those on your Alliance could be a critical choice here to make you lead off in most of your elimination matches.
Absolutely. Mean Machine is one of those teams that we've seen do the 4 cube autonomous a couple times here this weekend. That's going to be something really valuable here. They can be maybe a little bit slower sometimes in teleop than some of those other teams we have in the top 8. But if it was me, I would say in this game, strategy, I would prioritize autonomous first, right? It's easier to play this game if you get ahead early. It takes a little bit of the pressure off. The scale's lower. It's easier to put those cubes up faster, make sure they're not falling off. And then the second priority is if you do get behind, if something happens and your autonomous doesn't get you ahead, being able to stack those cubes high and catch up without having too much trouble.
Right, so our 2 seed right now, 3310, they've shown this weekend that they have a 3 cube auto in both the switch and the scale. So Mason, what are they looking for an autonomous partner?
I think 3310 has that X factor with having that switch auto so that they can clear the switch fence if they get paired up with a good 3 cube scaler. So they're going to be looking for someone who definitely do 3 cubes on their side, but they don't have the advantage that 1678 with such a good platform. 1678 Citrus Circuits platform is so great, anybody can work on it, whereas 3310, we've seen it work sometimes, not other times when they drop those forks. So they're going to want someone that they can guarantee that they're going to get 2 robots up in the air at the end of the match. So they might be looking for teams with a great platform that they can drive on instead, or someone who has some really high ground clearance that can ride along with them.
So at this event, we have all these great scale robots. Probably going to be seeing a lot of them picked within the top 8. But Stephanie, what are these alliances going to be looking for in the 3rd partner out on the field and their 4th partner in reserve?
I think when we watched the championship matches this year, we definitely saw how valuable that 3rd partner can be. Being able to play a strategy, whether it's an offensive strategy of trying to take your opponent's switch, or a defensive strategy of trying to slow your opponents down to the scale or to your switch, it is absolutely a critical role, and they need to, I would say, find a team that is robust, able to play that hard defense and get in the way, and able to confidently execute the plan on either side of the field that you need them to do.
And a reminder to the Alliance representatives, please go down to the field for Alliance selections. The earlier you're there, the earlier we can check you off and make sure that you're not missing, because you can slow down the Alliance selection process pretty significantly. So we've seen some teams here this weekend that have been relatively low in the rankings that have some pedigree this year. They've had great scale autos, but they just haven't had good matches here. What are some of the dark horses that we might see picked high or really changing the makeup of an Alliance later in the selections?
I've seen the winners from last year, 696, the Circuit Breakers, have some really good matches. They've fallen over a few times, though, but I think that could be an X factor that shows up. 973 is another one. Greybots, they're perennial good here in California. They're always somebody we talk about. They won a world championship at the Houston event 2 years ago, so they know how to play on the big leagues. They don't fail whenever it's critical times. So I'm curious how early they're going to go in the draft when we haven't been talking about them too much lately.
We've also got quite a few teams that had very strong regular season performances that we're not seeing in the top 10 here. We have Shockwave, who made it to Einstein this year in Houston. We have Sodabots, who was ranked #1 on their division. Definitely some strong scale robots down outside of the top 10.
I'll be interested to see these really strong scale robots playing with 2 strong scale robots on their Alliance. How do you have, Mason, do you like having 3 robots at some point during the match putting on the scale, or do you prefer 1 robot to ideally stick just to switches and vaults?
Yeah, when it comes to if you're going to have 3 robots put cubes on the scale, do that triple tap. I think it happens early in the match. When it happens late and things are a little bit more randomized, congestion becomes a big problem on the field. So because we have the Serpentine here, I think some of these later seeds, the 6, 7, 8 seeded alliances, they're going to end up with 3 pretty good scale robots, and they can strategize early in the match that all 3 are going to have 3 robots score on the scale in a certain order, and that's going to give them that early lead. Then they'll want to taper off and go to just 2, maybe even just 1 if they're able to maintain that scale. But I think that's a huge threat to some of these top alliances that are really only going to have 2 good scale robots on their alliance, and they're only going to use those 2 scale robots.
For sure, I think having that added scale capability provides you with a lot of extra flexibility and able to adapt to what your opponents are doing. However, that's also an added challenge and complexity, and something that's a lot more difficult to make that call during a match about what each team needs to be doing.
Well, we'll see many different styles of alliances here. They have compatible climbs available. We have buddy climbs available. We might even have kind of switch on the fly end games, because you're really going to need those points guaranteed. We've seen a lot of alliances this year at championships even looking great throughout the match. They've got controls of the switch and the scale, but then they just don't get the 60 points at the end. How much variance do you think that there's going to be just from teams have been missing the end games at this competition?
I've definitely been surprised to see. I expected a lot more face the boss ranking points coming into this weekend. However, a lot of these robots have played well over 100 matches at this point in the season, and it's really hard to build a robot that stays consistent through that many matches.
Yep. The variation in the end game really speaks to having robots that are compatible with each other, so you can have 2 or 3 different options of how you go there. And I think just as much as the end game, the autonomous modes matters as well. With the randomization of the plates, you don't know which way you're going to be going. You need to have not just one autonomous that works well for Alliance, but you need 2 or 3 or 4 different alliances based on the randomization of it. So it's not just that there's one alliance when the scales go my way, our autonomous modes work. It's that they have to go your way in 2 or 3 different ways. So that's a big X factor. And then the other one is so many of these teams have played together. You mentioned a bunch of P&W teams. They've seen each other a lot at different district events and championships. We have a lot of California regional winning alliances represented here. So there could be some of that bringing people back together who have worked together. They've already figured some of these big questions out, and those autonomous nodes are still stored back there in the code somewhere that they can bring up.
I think 4911 Cyber Knights is one of those teams that comes to mind when you bring up that point. They had a fantastic coordinated auto with 2910 Jack in the Bot that was able to get them all the way to the finals on Einstein in Houston this year. And 2910 is not in the top 10 here. They may be available when it comes around to Cyber Knight's turn to pick.
And we also saw in one of the qualification matches where both alliances were running, I think it was Code Orange versus 1678, and they were both running 3-cube autos, but then there was bare metal with a compatible side scale auto, and that tipped it one more cube in their favor. So some of the teams here that have 2-cube autos, those won't be used if they're on an alliance. So their backup autonomous modes will be critical, and a lot of these teams, they're running new drivers, new programmers. It's the start of the new year, so it's odd, the dichotomy of really old and experienced robots with some newer players, and I think we have the opportunity here to see some real variance, and I think that some matches are going to look very close with the number of cubes on skills and switches, but not close in the score because they're just behind the whole time. So Mason, how do you come back when you're putting cubes on your scale plate consistently, one after another, but it's still tilted away from you?
That's kind of the tricky part of this game, is you have to keep applying pressure to the scale, because if you don't, then the other alliance will stop applying pressure and move on and attack your other game elements. But you have to sneak in some pressure onto the switches as well. And so this is a very fine knob to turn. You have to at least leave one robot putting cubes up on the scale. That's usually somebody who's traveling back to your original protected pile of cubes, so they have a supply. And then someone else goes deep and tries to do the short run that goes between your supply that's at the wall where your human player feeds you to your opponent's switch. You've got to take that robot at a key moment and put that pressure on, because that might be the only way you're going to relieve some pressure on that scale and have it tip back in your favor. We're also seeing a lot of defense getting played that's putting teams on edge as they're trying to get cubes, and that shakes them off their game. They're a little bit sloppier, and sloppy leads to misstacked cubes. Misstacked cubes leads to ones falling off the scale. So a lot of different elements. You just got to keep that energy on the field up, keep the other alliance on your toes, because if you let them get in a groove, they're going to destroy you.
I think we're also going to see a big impact in terms of resource management when it comes to the eliminations in this game, where you put your cubes, because very quickly you run out of the ones that start on the field that are not in protected zones. And then if you're using your pyramid cubes, whether you want to put them into your vault, your switch, or your scale, can have a big change, a big impact based on what your opponents are doing. And it's really important to make sure you're utilizing those resources the best you possibly can.
Alliance captains, teams, if your alliance captains aren't down at the field right now, you should find them, make sure that they're coming down to the field. The queuers will direct you, find the clump of people with one shirt in between them, not just one team. Get ready for alliance selection. We're Robo Sports Network, broadcasting here from Chezy Champs 2018. Alliance selections are coming up next, and elimination matches playoff matches will be starting at 1300. So stick around. Alliance selections are up next. Let's go down to the field.